What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of NeoVintage News. Now, for you guys who have never seen this show, basically I go over the biggest stories in gaming that broke last week, give you guys my quick thoughts, and towards the end I give you guys my game recommendation of the week and what I've been playing. So last week, if you watched that show, we talked all about the PlayStation 5 pre-orders going live and the whole mayhem and fiasco that kind of came from that. Well, this week on Tuesday, we actually got Xboxes. Now, Xboxes was very different in the way that they had a very specific time and date that everything was going to go live. So things on the surface immediately were going to be way more organized for Xboxes, but things didn't necessarily play out as planned as everybody expected. So I'm just going to read a little bit here. So Xbox Series X and S pre-orders went live on Tuesday morning, and as one would expect, chaos ensued. Demand was absolutely insane. So Xbox actually responded in a tweet about this, and they said, "We are humbled by the record-breaking demand for Xbox Series X and S. Huge thanks to everyone for the excitement. If you weren't successful today, be sure to sign up with retailers and updates, and expect more consoles to become available on November 10th. So very interesting thing there. The demand far exceeded what I expected, but I think that's an absolutely great thing for the Xbox ecosystem. The fact that there's this much fervor and demand around their new console is a great thing, because again, that was everybody's question, was there's a lot of trip ups with the Xbox One. Is that going to carry in to the Xbox Series X and S sales, or is a lot of the goodwill they fostered in the kind of Game Pass Phil Spencer era going to be what kind of prevails into the future? And it seems like, at least for now, things are looking quite up for Xbox. Yeah, I was sitting there with my dual screen setup ready to go, and literally the moment we refreshed, because there was a little countdown on GameStop that actually synced up with my clock computer. So the moment it went live, I believe at like 11 o'clock or something like that in my time, immediate just Walmart down. And Walmart was the first one I went to, because that was actually where I was able to secure my PlayStation 5, and I was like, if I can get them all from the same place, that'd be cool. But yeah, so I went to Walmart first because I know people swamp Amazon and like GameStop like crazy immediately. So I was like, let me try to hit like Walmart and Target and maybe Best Buy to maybe increase the chances of me being able to get a console. Walmart gone immediately. I was like, oh god. Went to Best Buy. Best Buy didn't even go live yet. So I was like, oh god. Amazon down. GameStop had this weird queue system. They said do not refresh. I got in, but I didn't realize they meant like do not refresh period. And I actually refreshed the pages because I didn't really see where to go. I screwed that up, so it threw me back in the queue. So I went into full panic mode, and so my last resort was Target, and it had this weird thing where if you put multiple, I'm trying to like put one in my cart and nothing happens. Try to put one in my cart and nothing happens. So you keep clicking that, and eventually it's like you have the most in your cart. So I'm like, oh, something's in my cart. You click your cart, nothing in there. So I'm like, oh god, there's some weird glitch going on here. I'm like, oh, if I'm not able to get the Series X. And again, I would have been happy in some way if I was able to get the S or the X. So I would have been happy either way, but honestly I couldn't secure one for either. But finally I refreshed Target and I saw a little one in my cart. Something went through. Went in, there's a Series X there. I signed out, or I checked out and everything, and it went smoothly for the most part. And I looked, my pre-order's still live there. So it looks like for now I lucked out on being able to get an Xbox Series X as well. Very excited about that. I feel terrible for all the people that I still see in the comment sections of like Twitter and stuff like that who are still not able to get either a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series S or X in person or online. It's been really bad. There's been a lot of botting. Thank God I'm not in the RTX 3060, I believe is the term, space, because I know that had its own set of botting issues, so I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that. But boy, man, what a nightmare. I expected this one to go the smoothest, because again, they had the time, they had the date. I know Xbox is popular, but I felt like the demand was probably going to be a little bit different between the PlayStation 5 and the Series X, but it seems like, at least for launch, things were just as crazy on the Xbox side as it was for PlayStation side. I don't know what the quantity allotments were for all these retailers and stuff like that, so I don't know if there's a lot of Xbox in the wild or not. I'm not sure. But I'm sure Xbox is really, really excited to see this amount of demand for their console. Last thing you ever want is to launch a console and have consoles stocked up and nobody really moving them. So thank goodness for Xbox that they seem to be doing really well. And now we're in the home stretch. I secured my two consoles, and hopefully they deliver them in a timely manner. I guess that's the concern now, is my Xbox most likely will not arrive on launch date. It's going to come anywhere from, I believe, like a day after to the next week's Monday or something like that. So it could be a little bit before I have my Xbox. PlayStation is still set to arrive day one on the 12th. So we'll see how all that plays out. Who knows? Maybe if I luck out, both of them will come out on the 12th, and that'd be beautiful. I guess we can move on to the next story, and this is about an absolute juggernaut of the game right now that's kind of been the cultural zeitgeist moment happening right now, and it kind of in many ways kind of took a lot of the steam out of a lot of the headlines we were seeing for like Fall Guys a couple weeks back, and it's basically Among Us. So apparently there was a sequel planned for this game, and it's canceled due to the game's popularity. So the developer for them, Innersloth, has decided to cancel Among Us 2 and instead focus on expanding the content offered in the first game. In a blog post, the developer wrote that the decision was made in response to the recent spike in popularity for the party survival game, which has been downloaded over 41 million times in just September, which is insane. I bet they're really happy to be like, an indie developer and seeing those kind of numbers. All the content we had planned for Among Us 2 will instead go into Among Us 1. Innersloth writes, this is probably the more difficult choice because it means going deep into the core of code of the game and reworking several parts of it. We have lots of things planned, and we're excited to bring new content to everyone as you enjoy playing the game. So this is a really, really interesting thing for you guys that have kind of dived into the information that the developer has provided for us. They let us know basically that Among Us is built on pretty old architecture at this point. I believe this game is already 2 years old or something like that. It was kind of in the out there for quite a while before it really popped off. And so they were kind of going to start fresh and new with a sequel, brand new tech, brand new engine and stuff like that. But it looks like because they don't want to split the player base, they're going to try to ham-fist all those resources into the first one and see it make it work. Again, I'm not a coding expert. I'm not a developer. I don't know exactly how the tech's going to work, but I think that's really, really interesting. And as complicated as this is a good problem to have. The fact that people are playing this indie game is a phenomenal thing for them. I'm sure they did not expect this. I'm surprised that for the most part they've seemed to be able to handle the server load and everything like that, because again, there's an astronomical amount of people playing this game. I know a lot of people myself, so I'm really happy for them. Shout out to the Among Us team, and hopefully they can make this work, and hopefully trying to alter this tech too much doesn't affect performance too much that can de-incentivize people playing the game. That's the only concern I would imagine, is that how much can the original game really handle in terms of on a technical level. We'll see. The next one is the most interesting story that I personally saw break this week. Well, next to another one. But Amazon announced a cloud gaming platform called Luna. A lot of interesting information we got on this. So the service will be available for an introductory price for $5.99 a month during its early access phase. It's going to give subscribers the ability to play Luna Plus channel games across 2 devices simultaneously, and offers 4K to 60 frames per second resolution for select titles. So obviously this is immediately giving us a lot of Stadia vibes. There is some differences. So what it looks like here is you pay the monthly subscription price and you have access to a collection of games, more similar to Game Pass as opposed to Stadia that has this kind of subscription price, but you're also paying for the games piecemeal on top of that. So it looks like the price proposition is way more better on the Amazon Luna. The form factor of what they're offering here, specifically the controller and stuff like that, looks exactly what Stadia was. It looks like Stadia crossed the Nintendo Switch Pro controller type thing. It has the offset joysticks and stuff like that. The controller doesn't look too bad. But yeah, another person dipping their toes into cloud gaming. We'll see ultimately how it plays out. I'm not convinced right now, but we've known that Amazon for quite a while now has played around and tinkered with the idea of jumping into the console and gaming market. Seems like this is the way that they're going to do it. You guys know, for people who have watched this show before, I am no fan of Stadia, and I'm going to keep my eye on this. I'm going to keep an open mind, so if they do good things, I'm going to support them. But right now, the jury's out about whether this will do well or not. Again, you don't get bigger than Google, and it doesn't seem like they were really able to make it work. So I don't know that necessarily Amazon will be the one to make it work, especially with xCloud having that established player base already in the Xbox ecosystem. They're fighting an uphill battle because, again, not only are they trying to break into an industry, but they're trying to fight against people who have strong presences in the specific offering of the game industry that they're doing. So it's a really tricky balance that I don't know if they're going to be able to succeed in. And ultimately, it's just having unique experiences on your platform. You need to be either the one that can offer high quality experiences at the cheapest price proposition, which is possibly what they can do, or just have exclusives. That's another thing. So if they can't get exclusives on their platform and they have some problems like Stadia does, if they can find a way to be like, hey, We don't have a ton of unique experiences here, but you'll be able to play, God of War 2. That's never going to happen. I don't know why I said that. That's stupid. Like Control, for example, at 4K for $6 a month, which is going to be the cheapest way you're going to do that because you don't have to invest any hardware or anything like that. So that's possible. That's an interesting thing. But again, I'm curious to see how the 4K 60 frames per second thing works because, Stadia had its version that was paid, the pro version that would have the highest fidelity things, but then there's a free version that hasn't gone live yet that has the lower quality experiences, and there were some performance errors on there. Some people have good experiences, some people have bad experiences. So I'm curious to see how the actual streaming tech works out for Amazon. xCloud has made it work, so I know cloud gaming can exist, but obviously that's not something that can have nationwide adoption because everybody's Wi-Fi rates in different countries and stuff like that varies, and some people literally do not have the tech to handle this kind of gaming. So, I mean, the jury's out on whether Amazon will succeed or not. I'm going to keep an open mind for them because, again, they can make it work. They can be the ones to succeed in this space. But as of right now, it's giving me a lot of Stadia vibes. It looks very, very similar. And, I mean, I'm sure Microsoft and PlayStation are not particularly enthused into all these people trying to dip into their space. But ultimately, there is something to be said to be an establishment and well-known quantity in the space as opposed to somebody being new trying to break in. People have broken into the gaming space before. Microsoft did it during the PS2, GameCube era. So it can be done, but it's not an easy thing. Here's another story that is actually had quite a bit of controversy associated to it, and it's about the Spider-Man remaster upgrade situation. There's been a little bit of controversy, a lot of confusion, a lot of miscommunications. So let's just try to break down this story. So Insomniac Games, the ones who developed Spider-Man, has announced that a PS5 remaster of 2018's Spider-Man is coming, but there's some interesting details surrounding it. So it won't be sold as a standalone title. It will be bundled in with Spider-Man Miles Morales Ultimate Edition. This is a distinct independent game, so your copy of Spider-Man that you have on PS4 will not upgrade to this version. So this is not going to be like what you're going to see on Series X and stuff like that, where it's going to be an up-res and you get the free upgrade and you could put your last gen disc into your next gen system and it works beautiful. This is going to be closer to what I believe Call of Duty did with the Modern Warfare remaster, where they bundled it in with, I think, Infinite Warfare and stuff like that. It's very similar to that situation, or the various different remasters that we've gotten. So, Saints Row the third remastered. This is a very distinct thing. This is not kind of a DLC upgrade patch or anything like that. So I saw some people really upset with this. I think this was a kind of a marketing miscommunication off rip, where a lot of people were thinking it was something that it's not. I'm not mad with them having a separate remaster sold version for next gen. I'm not mad at that. It's a 2-year-old game. If the increases in quality and fidelity and loading and performance and stuff like that are that drastic, I think they can justify the added price, maybe at like $40 or something like that. $60 if they include maybe all the DLC and everything, maybe. I guess my critique is I don't like when they don't allow you to buy something piecemeal. When they insist on kind of bundling it in with an Ultimate Edition or a more expensive version or something like that. I take issue with that. I didn't like it when they did it, when Activision did it with Call of Duty, and I don't like it when they do it here now. If somebody just wants to buy something a separate way, price it up a little bit, let them do that. I don't like when they say that you need to buy the bundle to be able to play this experience. It's just annoying. It doesn't come off very consumer friendly to me. But I'm not necessarily mad at the remaster in and of itself. I wasn't planning on getting this, but the fact that it's going to be bundled in with the Ultimate Edition, that's going to be like, 70 and change or something like that. That might be worth it for me, because I am kind of curious about the performance upgrades. I did really, really love Spider-Man, and when they demoed a lot of the PlayStation 5 tech, what they showed it off on was the Spider-Man load times and how short they were. So it would be really, really exciting for me to kind of play Miles Morales, but also be able to dive into Peter Parker's experiences with such insane, performance updates. Because again, Miles Morales is a PlayStation 5 game taking advantage of PlayStation 5 hardware, but having a PlayStation 4 game that is just less demanding than a PlayStation 5 game on PlayStation 5 hardware, I would imagine it's going to be a very unique experience that I'm really excited to jump into. So I'll probably buy it. I'm looking forward to it. But again, I feel like insisting that it's bundled in and not offering it as a standalone title is a little consumer unfriendly. The last story we're going to get into, and we're making good time this week, is the Microsoft Bethesda acquisition. And this was a story that kind of rocked the industry. I don't know that anybody was expecting this. I certainly was not. I believe Steve texted me the story, and I was like, wait, there's no freaking way. And I'm like, maybe they bought like a team or something like that. Maybe they bought like it or something crazy. It's still crazy. But I was like, there's no way they just acquired all of Bethesda. But let's get into the story. So in a mind-blowing announcement, Microsoft has announced that they have acquired ZeniMax, which is the parent company and by proxy of Bethesda. The deal apparently cost them upwards of $7.5 billion. Now, even though Bethesda will officially be a part of Xbox's family of game studios, it's going to run as its own individual like division, maintaining all of its leadership intact and stuff like that. So the structure of Bethesda will not change. All the heads, everything, where there won't be shakeup, there won't be layoffs, there won't be anything like that. They're just acquiring them on the top level. So Phil Spencer made it clear that while Bethesda games will adopt some of Xbox's new practices, including launching onto Xbox Game Pass and becoming playable through game streaming through xCloud, the company will retain some of the autonomy that resulted in some of the biggest games of all time. It's about the culture of those teams, Spencer explained. They're not about becoming us. So that's a great thing, is that though Microsoft is acquiring Bethesda, Bethesda will remain Bethesda and what made them great. And also, I think the cons of Bethesda Game Studios specifically are going to remain intact. Everything is going to remain as it is. It's probably just on a top level. They're going to be kind of joining an ecosystem, which is a great thing. Bethesda SVP of Global Marketing, Pete Hines, said, "We're still working on the same games we were yesterday, made by the same studios we worked for years, and games will be published by us." So that's really, really interesting. If anything, they're just probably going to have access to some of the resources that Microsoft can offer Bethesda. But again, Bethesda is an insane, massive conglomerate of a company. They're not hurting for cash or anything like that. So it didn't seem like this was necessarily a finance. But I mean, who couldn't use, $7.5 billion? So this is a pretty good thing. I was apprehensive at first, but once they offered a little bit more details and explained that Bethesda is going to remain autonomous in its own division and stuff like that, that makes me excited and happy. But it does raise some questions. For you guys who pay attention to the Xbox ecosystem, Microsoft recently also purchased Obsidian. And there's a little bit of crossover in terms of what specifically Bethesda Game Studios does and what Obsidian does. So that's really, really interesting. Not only does Microsoft now have Fallout in their arsenal, but they have the Outer Worlds, which are very similar games. They have Outer Worlds that is also probably going to have some similarities to Starfield, which is Bethesda Game Studios' upcoming game. Also, Obsidian is working on kind of like a medieval first-person game that very much evokes the same kind of stuff as Elder Scrolls or Skyrim specifically. And I know ZeniMax owns ESO, or Elder Scrolls Online, which is going to have that. So there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination here, and I wonder if they're going to have them work a little bit more intimately, specifically Obsidian. Obsidian has its own projects that they're working on. They have a whole bunch of new stuff in the work. They have that one survival game that Growing or something like that. That's very, really interesting and very unique for what they're doing. So that kind of raised some questions for me. Also, keep in mind, Bethesda is more than just Fallout and Skyrim. They own a lot of different teams that work on stuff. That means that Doom is going to be under the kind of Microsoft ecosystem now as well, Wolfenstein and stuff like that. So it's very interesting kind of stuff that's going on over there. Did not expect this whatsoever. Again, this was probably the last team I would have guessed, because again, how big Bethesda is and how great they're doing. But it seems like, judging by the details of the deal, both sides can equally benefit from this deal as long as everything remains as it's supposed to be. The leadership's going to remain intact. They're working on the same games. It's not like Microsoft's going to be like, okay, we own you now you guys are going to work on this. None of that's happening. It doesn't seem like Microsoft necessarily has a say on the creative side of Bethesda. They're trusting them on that. So hopefully this works out well for them, and we don't hear, in a couple years, a kind of disgruntled Bethesda or something like that wanting to leave the Microsoft umbrella, because things like that happen as well when you kind of sign under. We see in like the music industry and stuff like that, you sign to a record label, all these things are promised to you, and then you start working with them, and then you realize things aren't as they seem, and now you got disgruntled employees and stuff like that. So hopefully this works out for everybody involved, but I think it's a very interesting thing, and Microsoft is very interesting. they're buying up all these teams and creating this insane ecosystem to really kind of mirror what PlayStation did some time back to create the PlayStation Studios that has an immense talent over there. Microsoft's doing the same thing, but it's also simultaneously they don't necessarily have the same interest in like exclusives, for example, and they're putting everything on Game Pass. So it's like similar but very, very different as well. So I'm very fascinated by Microsoft's approach here, and now that they're moving into a next generation, we could see the full kind of fruits of what they've been, working on all these years in the past, specifically in the Phil Spencer era, kind of repairing a lot of damage that was done to the Microsoft ecosystem in the Xbox One launch, and kind of setting themselves up for the alley-oop. So hopefully this all pays off for them this next generation, and hopefully we can see a new and invigorated Xbox ecosystem, and maybe Bethesda as well. So I guess we can move on to the last section of the game, which is my game recommendation of the week and what I've been playing. And yet again, for another week, it's all the same game, ultimately. So what I've been playing is Mafia Definitive Edition that came out on Friday, but it actually went live Thursday night, and I had it pre-ordered, so I was able to play a couple hours on Thursday. And so far I am in love with this game. You guys know I'm a massive Mafia fan. I've loved all the games. Big fan of Mafia 2, 3. I like them all. Mafia 1 was the one that I had the least experience with. I played it a little bit on PS2 back in the day. It actually didn't really hit me that well back then, and it wasn't so much the story. It was just a very empty game. It was a little clunky. It was just not really my cup of tea. I jumped in really on Mafia 2 specifically, and that's when I really fell in love with it and went on to 3. So here we are, a remake of the first one, and I am so incredibly impressed with what they did here. I understand that they were doing a remake, but I didn't realize that it was going to be a remake on this caliber. This is a PS4 game through and through. The fidelity, it has some of the most beautiful visuals I've seen in quite a while. Did not expect this from them whatsoever, and so they delivered an amazing experience, and it's finally this amazing story gets to be told in the fidelity that it deserves. Really, the gameplay is fast, it's kinetic. I love period pieces. I love being able to experience kind of 1930s New York. It finally looks the way it needs to look, again, because the original game, it has these kind of flat textures and stuff like that. So besides kind of some of the dialogue and some of the character design, you can't really even tell that it's in the 30s, but this one really kind of captures the spirit of that era and stuff like that. I even noticed some stuff with like the voice acting, for example, where some of the accents and stuff like that is evocative of that era. So they did a phenomenal job on that regard, and I'm loving the story so far. I'm gonna have more details for it as I get deeper and deeper in the game. I'm probably gonna beat it relatively fast because, again, I play these games a lot, and Mafia is not known for these expansive long stories, so I'm expecting something anywhere from 15 to 20 hours. That's probably going to take me another week or so to get through, and then once I finish it, I'll be able to give you guys my more detailed thoughts. I'm probably also going to go into more depth into it with the NeoVintage podcast that will be going live Monday, so if you want to hear me talk more about it, I'll be able to talk about it there. Now, that's the end of the show, guys. I did want to tack on something at the end here that I wanted to give you guys a heads up. Tomorrow, this is going live Saturday. On Sunday, tomorrow, we're going to have an Avengers spoiler cast going live, and we've been talking about this for quite a while. I should have tacked this onto the beginning of the show, but that's fine. Avengers spoiler cast, we're going to be talking in depth about our feelings, about how the game performs, how the gameplay is, what our thoughts on the story. We're going to have spoiler-free stuff at the beginning. So lots to talk about here. So for you guys who are into Avengers and want to hear our thoughts about that, we're going to have a dedicated podcast for that going live tomorrow. So keep your eyes out for that if that interests you. Until next time, this is Jabril from NeoVintage News. Love you guys. Bye.